Okay. Yeah.
Hey guys, Rob with AIM. Just wanted to go over a very controversial subject, particularly amongst triathletes, kick, not kick. We talked about the theory of a 6-beat versus a 12-beat kick in our 101 series, so hopefully you took a moment and watched those. There's two things I want you to understand. First of all, you want to strengthen your hip flexors and you want to use the advantages of the kick, but you need to know how to use them and implement them correctly, okay? This is called a kickboard for those of you who are new to the sport, and unfortunately this kickboard gets used completely inappropriately almost every time it's brought in the water. Reason being is, if you've been following the 101 series and you've been following the first 4 videos, you'll notice that we talked about we want you horizontal in the water, we want you pressing your chest down to bring your hips up. Then you go and you put this kickboard out in front of you, and the first thing it does, the normal position for someone on a kickboard, is their head's up. Well, where do you think your hips are going to go when your head's up? Your hips are going to drop, as you can see. It's just it's a law of physics in water. If my head's up and I don't kick like crazy, my hips are just going to drop. There's no way they'll stay up. If you remember back to the pencil drill, if I press my chest down, where do my hips go? Up. Watch. And as soon as I pick my head up, my hips drop again. So that's what makes this kickboard so confusing for a lot of people, because they're like, well, I'm supposed to make my kick a little bit stronger. Well, where we're trying to improve your kick strength is up in the hip flexor area, because once your hand is out here, the only thing that can make you use your abdominals in the rotation side is going to be hip flexors and a strong, powerful kick. Okay? We call it the coiling effect, where you want to be able to coil up and snap, and we'll get into that in a later series. But for right now, people are like, should I or shouldn't I use a kickboard? Well, use a kickboard if you're going to use it correctly. All right? What do I mean by that? When you've got a kickboard out in front of you, I don't want the kickboard bringing your arms up in the water. I want you to press your armpits and your lats down so that it brings your hips up. So, for example, instead of sitting here with there's no pressure on my armpits, my legs I have to kick to get my hips up. What I want you to do is press your armpits down and look where my hips go. I'm barely kicking. And all I'm doing is pressing that down. Now, I'm not pressing it under the water. It's not necessary. It's very subtle. But if I'm pressing with my hips, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but the idea is you should be engaging your lats and your back. All right? You press down a little bit, hips come up. I have a very, very slow, non-effort, almost an effortless type of kick. I'm just kind of barely fluttering. But the pressure where I feel it the most is in my armpit and in between my chest. All right? If I don't press on the kickboard, then I have to kick like this to keep my hips up, and I'm not even moving anywhere. I'm just trying to keep myself horizontal in the water. So your takeaway on that is you want to be pressing down on the buoy slightly, engaging your lats and your back, then start kicking down the lane. Okay? Which then segues us to, well, what is the appropriate way to kick when you have a kickboard? Okay? If you think about a ballerina when she's up on point, okay, the way that the toes are pointing away from you, that's what you want to think about in the swim. The idea is you want to make your feet as big as possible so that you get as much leverage. Think about it as a fin, if you will. Well, here's where it becomes a challenge. As triathletes and runners, particularly people who come from a running background, the nature of running strengthens the Achilles tendon, it strengthens all the ligaments and tendons around the ankle. Then also you jump in the pool and you're asking for this excessive amount of flexibility in the foot and the ankle. Well, it's not going to be there. It's not that there's anything wrong with your body or whatever, it's just years of development, okay? So first of all, give yourself permission to just relax. It's not that it can't be fixed. On the flip side of that, you don't want to have ankles that are so flexible, because then when you hit the run, that's when you see people that will roll their ankles a lot. A lot of swimmers have problems with running just for that reason. So with that in mind, when you're kicking down the lane, what I want you to think about, as I kick away from you, you'll notice that my toes are pointing back towards yourself. The question is, well, should my ankles break the surface of the water? Well, ideally no, because if you keep your feet underneath the water, you're going to leverage more of the water, which is going to work your hip flexors a little bit more. You have to remember, as soon as you introduce any kind of bubbles or air, you're going to lose leverage, okay? But you do want to have a real high in the water type of a kick, which should correlate with your shoulders and your hips, okay? You want to be kicking from the hip flexors and not from your knees. Your hip flexors are where your hands go in your pockets. If you're just kicking from your knee, okay, the diameter of your shins are not nearly as wide as your thighs. All right, so the idea is you want as much surface area as possible. You want to kick from the hips, and you have a nice, big, powerful kick. All right, when your hips catch on fire and you're moving down the lane, that's the appropriate way. That's what you should feel, even though it sounds sadistic. Okay? So the idea here is for some of you, you're going to start to kick and you'll actually go backwards. Well, that's an ankle inflexibility issue. Don't get frustrated. All right? If you need to put some small fins on the zoomers or whatever to facilitate your kicking, you can go ahead and do that. Okay? Another tool that you can use is that finesse snorkel that goes in the middle where you can lay on your stomach and just kick. Sometimes that'll help as well. So the idea behind the kickboard is you want your ankles to stay below the surface, kick from the hips. You want your armpits being pressed down on the board, and that's how you want to make your way down the lane. I'll go halfway down just so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. And the goal here is I don't want to start kicking until I get balance. And you should think about that on every drill that you do. And when your ankles break the surface every once in a while, it's not going to be the end of the world. But what you want to realize is you want to optimize every second that you can. Notice I'm just gently pushing down on the board. My hips come up immediately. I straighten my legs out, and I just skip from my hip flexors. Now, I don't know if you can see that in the video or not, but the idea is I'm pointing my toes towards you as I go away from you, okay? Again, I'm trying to make my foot as flat as possible so I get as much of that fin effect as I possibly can. So hopefully you learned a little bit about the kickboard. Remember, it's all about supplementing body position, all right? If you're jumping into this video and not watching the first three, please go back and check them out. Otherwise, this balance stuff won't make sense. So until next time, thanks for watching.